Here we go. Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm just waiting for some people to come in. And in the meantime, I'm going to post the video on our blog. Okay, it's been about a minute. Someone's come in. Let's get started then. Hey. Okay, so I wanted to start off apologizing that I didn't come, I wasn't here available yesterday. I was feeling a little off at the end of the day, so I just came home and I ended up having to nap for 3 hours. But I'm all good today. And oh, I also wanted to talk, I've changed the setup a little bit. So I sort of learning, what's this phrase here? Figuring out the issues. So I'm back on the laptop. I can see comments more clearly. And I know someone last week asked me if the jumpsuit or the overalls I were wearing, if I made it, and I didn't see it. My mom was watching and she told me about that afterwards. So I just want to let everyone know I did not make it. It's by Birds of North America, which is a brand out of Toronto. They have one shop there, and they also have a great online website. But in addition to that, if you wanted to make something like that, it'd be very, very similar to the Yanta overalls. So that would be a good substitution for that if you wanted. Okay. I think we just jump in. We're doing, another thing too. My mom gave me constructive feedback last week, and she said that because of the setup, she couldn't actually see any of the examples that I had. And so I'm hoping, yes, this lighting is much better. So with regards to French seams, because at the end of the video today, you'll have to do 4 more French seams, or 1, 2, you have to do 2 more French seams. So I just wanted to show, this is what, generally speaking, you would do when you're sewing something together. Light is better and wide shot is perfect. Perfect, thank you. I'm glad it's working for you. And much better. I played around with the light settings. It's not too dark outside, so it's also okay that way. So you guys can clearly see that this is the right side and this is the wrong side. So when you're normally sewing up something, you want the right sides touching so that this would be your inside, so that when you open it all up, that would be your finished product. With French seams, it's not that way. I'm just going to trim off. So apologies for the double explanation on French seams, but I figure since it didn't show very well last week, it's not too bad to talk about it a little bit more. So with French seams, so this is how you would normally sew something that's not French seams. You wrong side out. French seams is right side out. So you put the wrong sides together and you sew along whatever the seam allowance is supposed to be. And then after that, you'll fold it right side touching. And I always, when doing this project, they ask for the seam to be pressed towards the sleeve, so the back, or I guess the front, depending on which sleeve you're doing. So I always like to give it a press in that direction while I have that. And then I give it another press in this position. So in case I didn't explain that, that's what, or if I did, just double explanation. So that's what you'll do. And then you sew all along again. So you'll get a piece like this, which I think you can clearly see the markings. So then what this does is it hides your sewn seam on the inside right in here. And then you have, I mean, keep in mind, none of this is going to be, this is not pattern matched, but then you have your finished seam on the outside here, on the right side here, and on the wrong side, it's going to look like that. So I wrote back over here because that you want to, in whatever directions that the pattern calls for. So in this case, it's to go towards the sleeves. So you would want to press this piece here towards the sleeves and not the opposite direction. So you, again, follow whatever pattern you may be doing for the future, but that's what you want to do. Another thing to keep in mind, this still, oh, there you can see it. So before, when you're at this stage, you want to make sure you clip all these little fluffs so that they don't show in your finished piece. And you also want to make sure, so in this case, the seam allowance is 1/4 and then 3/8. That's to make sure you've captured all of the seam in this little pouch here. If you don't capture it all, it will look, there you go, you can see it, right? It will look like that. So you're gonna have your wrong side fabric sticking out of your right side, and you don't want that. So if that happens to you, no stress, just fold it back up and create a secondary seam just below to ensure that you capture everything. And then it will look like that, perfect or perfect enough. So that's my second explanation of French seams. I hope that helps. And again, if you have any questions, just email us at the shop, come by, or make a comment in here. So I'm going to continue. And so if you have, no pressure if you're not following along, but if you followed along, you have finished all of your French seams for your sleeve joins. Like that and like that. It's really hard to tell because there is no right side or wrong side, but that's my sleeve joins. And again, they're pressed towards the sleeve, not the other way. And you want to make sure they all fall according to whatever pattern you may be doing. And then you always like to give it another good press on the outside to make it as flat as possible. And then also, I know, Nan Bread, I know that you came by the shop and you were like, I've never done French seams before, and I'm counting on you. If you have done it, let me know how it went, because I hope my instructions were good enough. Okay, so the next step we're doing is the neck binding. I figured today's video is going to need a full video just for the neck binding because it can be a little bit tricky. So next week, which is the 7th? The 8th. Next week, we're going to be doing the hems, which will be fairly easy. And then the sleeves of the extra sleeves went well. The demo hand holding helped a lot. I'm glad. So yes, we're going to do the sleeve over here for the other Raglan sleeve version, the free expansion pack. And we're going to do the hemming and the button. That will be the last final stage. If you haven't bought buttons yet, we just have some new ones at the shop. You only need the one button, so perhaps choose something, because they're at the shop we have them in packs of multiple. So perhaps if you're going to choose a different pattern that also requires button, you can choose something in that scenario. Okay, so what you're going to do, I recommend Wonder Clips. I always recommend them, but I recommend them in this scenario because I would poke myself. So these are Wonder Clips. You can use straight pins if you have straight pins. That's not an issue. And then what you're going to do, Now this is hard in my scenario because my fabric doesn't have a right or a wrong side, which is what is recommended for this pattern. But if you have fabric that is right side, wrong side, you want this is the right side. You want your right side facing, and then your right side of your collar touching. So the right sides are going to be touching like this. Obviously it's going to be smaller. Let's say it's like that. So that's what your collar will look like when you start pinning. So I've already pre-clipped because it's quite boring to watch pre-clipping. And then you should also have, if it's visible, a bit of extra, about 1/4 inch on each side if you're doing the split front. If you're doing the non-split front, you're going to be joining here at this shoulder seam. And then you would, just remind myself here, you're going to have a little bit of extra here, and you're going to sew that. So that at the end, after you sewed all the rest of the color, and then you're going to snip off the excess. If you're doing the split front, you don't snip off the excess. Well, you can if there's a lot of excess, but you're going to fold over 1/4 inch. Grab mine. Ow. I'm just trying to grab this so you guys can see it. There it is. So you're going to fold over 1/4 inch, and that will help encase it over there. And then the same thing on your buttonhole side. So it's held down by my clip. And if it helps, press it. That will help keep its shape. So just another 1/4 inch right there. And then what we're going to be doing is sewing along at a 3/8 all along the top here, this top. And then I'll be right back. And just take your time with this. It's not a race. And if you notice that your pieces are moving, then just adjust as needed. Which direction do I want to start in? I'm going to start in this direction. Oh, my little battery died. Okay. Just the regular light it is. I'm so happy I finally figured out this lighting situation. So as always, backstitch. I jumbled up. So I'm just going to rethread it. And then snip off the extra thread and start again. So the key to sewing a collar, if you're not, well, even if you're using a serger, is just, especially because of the curves, you're just going to take it nice and slow and stretch it. Well, it's easier for the split front because there is that hole in there, and just hold it nice and straight and ensure that if this is one side and these are the two sides, no. Because it's on a curve, if these are your fabric pieces, that you don't have one slipping up from the other. So if you do, again, just take your time and then realign your fabric pieces so that you don't have a gaping hole like right there, and then you sew it back over there. So you don't want that. You want to make sure it's all nicely aligned. And so just take your time. And just keep an eye on like what happened right now. I just needed to move. Essentially what I was showing with these two pieces is that it was starting to slip from one end. So I just had to move a little bit. So just keep an eye out and go slow. So when you're getting to your seam joins from your shoulder your shoulder joint, you want to make sure that the seam, because sometimes it can lift and move, so you want to make sure that when you get to that spot, you re-flatten it in the direction that it needs to be in according to the pattern. So in this scenario, I need to make sure it's towards the sleeves. And so for this part, it's already facing in that direction, but over here, it's going to be facing in the opposite. So I might have to realign it because it's flipping from this way and this side is flipping from that way. So my sewing machine is going to be able to go that way, but when I come this way, it's going to be trying to lift up that seam. So I really got to press down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ensure it's held in place. There's this is just a seam ripper, but there are tools. I think it's called an iron finger or something like that. There are tools that you can get for this purpose. Done. I'm sorry, this isn't super fast or entertaining. So I'm approaching another seam, but it's the seam that's lying flat in the right direction. So no stress there. Just doing some repositioning. So I'm coming up a seam on a seam again that's going in the opposite direction than I want it to be. So I'm just going to ensure it's held down. All done. I'm almost reaching the finale. So now when you get to the end, just keep in mind, if you're doing the split front, there is that button hole that you've made, so you don't want to catch that. So you just tuck it aside. So it's just right here. Can I show this? So it's just over here. I'm just going to, and the needle is here. I want to pull it towards, pull it away from the needle. So now just inspect you've caught all your curves, because like I said, if you haven't caught all your curves, you're going to have to go over that part again. So I'm just ensuring all of it is there. And also ensure that your seams, can you see? Oh, you can. Your seams are facing towards the sleeve for both of them. So if you, by any chance, you end up having this flipped to the other side, just unpick that area and then restitch. But don't forget to backstitch on both sides. So that sleeve is good. And that one is also. Okay, so now what we should do is press. Now, I don't know if it actually recommends to press, but I would recommend pressing. So let's see if the pattern. Okay, first they recommend to clip the curves. So I would grab a good pair of scissors. So you don't want to do this incorrectly. And you're going to clip all along. And so by clipping, they mean doing a small snip, not passing the thread that you've done. Because if you go, you won't be able to see it. But my thread is right here. If I snip beyond the thread, obviously that cuts. You just want to snip it just above the thread so it doesn't cause damage. So that's what we're going to do now. And I like to, I don't know if there's, I like to do lots of snips because then, oh, and the reason we're doing the snips is because it's a curved piece on a woven. If we didn't do the snips, it won't lay flat because you're putting a straight piece on a curve. So if you do little snips all around, it will, my finger's not going to curve like that, but it will allow it to curve around. Ooh, someone else has been joining us. So you want to make sure, in case, do I have any examples here? In case by any chance, let's just say this piece was further down like that. You want to, if you're snipping here, you want to snip on both sides. So you want to make sure that both of the right and the wrong side have been caught in the snip, because then otherwise it won't turn. Do you need to cut out a V? Just snipped a lot. Yeah, you just need to snip a lot. You don't need to cut out a V. Is that what they show? They do. I think that might just be because it's difficult to show otherwise. I have a bunch of loose threads trying to come through. I would recommend not using your thread snips for this because it would be quite tedious. At least my thread snips are not strong enough to cut through multiple layers of fabric. One layer would be okay, but multiples, no. If anyone is doing the button, you can also choose like a fun button that doesn't actually go with your fabric. I'm trying to decide if I want to do a really light blue that complements but isn't found in my fabric, or if I want to do something that blends in. I haven't decided yet. Ooh, another thing too is if you have labels that you like to use, I'll be showing how to put in a label in this video. It's actually quite easy because of the way that the collar is constructed. Ooh, did I go a little past? If you do go a little past your thread more than you're supposed to, just stitch it over that spot again and reinforce it. I'm going to be a little bit more careful. Almost done. trying to put my stuff back where it was supposed to be. Okay. I have a lot of threads flying around. So they actually don't recommend. Why don't they recommend pressing? I'm going to give it a quick press. I'll just find that the following step is slightly easier with a quick press. And I'm just going to use my tailor's ham. I'm not going to give it like a thorough press since that's not what they recommend. Just making sure I'm not crazy. Would there be a reason not to? Okay, maybe I won't, just in case. I don't remember what I did for my first one. So now we're going to do what's called understitching. So you've cut actually, if you find that you have, no, we'll do that next step. At some point, we're going to snip these a little bit closer so that there's not as much bulk, but we won't do that right now. So we have more space to do it. So how do I demonstrate this? Because that is clearly marked. So this is my right side. I'm going to flip it upside down. I mean, inside out. Okay. So this is my wrong side. So what we're going to do is flip that up. Your little pieces here are going to be flipped up, and we're going to understitch. So an understitch. Ooh, this is the best use of this foot. So that foot, this is one of my favorite feet, other than my own. It has this little, it's really hard to capture. It has this little black ridge right here. And so when you're understitching, you can put this ridge exactly in that spot so that it stays straight while you're sewing. So these parts that you just clipped, you're going to flip it up. And then from the right side, you're going to, if you have an understitch foot, if you don't, just take your time. It's totally, and most of the time these are standard. You're going to put your understitch foot so that it falls right along that line, and it'll just guide you through. Which reminds me like a Hot Wheels track. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just taking off. Whoops. Taking off that foot. And this will help, go in. This will help allow that bias to lay flat. There's also, if we weren't going to hem this, if we were doing, like the cello uses this technique as well, understitching allows the facing. So if, let's just pretend this was a facing. Understitching here allows the facing to not lift up like that. It keeps it nice and flat. But in this scenario, we are understitching in order to finish off the collar. See, why wouldn't you press this? I don't understand. I'm just going to do it. Sorry. I know I said I wasn't, but I feel like it's just going to be easier if I ensure that in order to make sure I catch all the seams, I'm just going to press it out. Up, not out. A tailor's ham really helps you do these curves without having to struggle too much. You'll still struggle a little, but much easier. It's a good tool to have. I know you can't see it. I wish I had like, I'm able to do like 2 cameras live, but like I said, the understitch foot is ready. And then you stitch it from the right side up. So this is my good side. This is my bad side. This just allows me to maneuver it better. It's not moving. Fabric doesn't want. One thing about my machine is a used machine from the, I would say, 80s or 90s, based on its looks. One thing about some machines, especially the FAFs, they have a, what is it called? Walking foot feature, so that it grabs the fabric and moves it along. I wish I had that right now because the fabric doesn't want to move. There we go. Just needed some encouragement. Again, just go really slow because you're sewing on a curve. The slower you go, the more accurate it will be. And just move your fabric around as needed while going through the curves. And I'm just doing a double check to make sure all the clipped parts are facing in the right direction so that they're being caught by the understitching, sorry. So now you should have caught all, again, hard to see. But there will be, oh, it's easier to see on this side. Let's see if I can change my lighting to make this easier. Nope. Nope. Okay, this is the best lighting. Ooh, what if I make it dimmer? No, it's not working. Okay, so there's a stitch very close to the line, and that's ideally how close you want it to be. You just want it to catch that piece right there, and an understitch foot will allow you to do that. And as a result, there's the line. There's basically 2 lines very close together. One line on top and one line on bottom, which is the understitch one. So you have finished that. And now we have, and now I'm gonna, I don't think they recommend this, or they might. Yeah, now I'm just gonna snip. Because now what we're doing is, I have to show it this way. We're gonna full tuck in the hem and then tuck it in again. That's what we're going to be doing. Folding once at 3" or until it meets the stitching, it says, whatever that may be for you. So fold once and then again. But in order to reduce the bulk, I'm going to clip these seams. I mean, all of this bit. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. Not a lot of it, just enough so that it's not bulky. And I don't think they recommend this in the instructions, and you don't have to do this step, but I like making it not too bulky. Again, be mindful of not snipping. Ooh, this is going to make a mess. Mindful of not snipping any key threads. AKA, what is holding it all together? So just to show you, I've snipped here about a quarter, maybe a quarter of an inch, and that's the regular part. And this part I've snipped. Not. This is going to be a long one. Sorry, guys. I'm making such a mess. Oh, there's even another person joining us now. Nanbrit, are you following are you sewing, or have you already sewn it together? Because I know you said that you'd cut out a lot, so I'm just wondering where you're at in your stage. Done. Okay, so, whoops. Just sewed on collar facing and trimming. Oh, perfect, you're also doing it. Okay, so now you're gonna fold it to the stitches, and then you're going to fold it again. So you don't need a hot hammer for this one, just a hot iron and patience. But you're welcome, if you have a hot hammer, you're welcome to use it, but because you're using sort of a visual guideline, it's a little bit easier. Anyone else who's watching, are you guys following, or are you guys following along, or going to do it later? Oh, and again, I'm just using my tailor's hem to help me. I wonder if one of the people watching is my mom, who said she did not want to talk. I'll call her afterwards and ask her. these stages or these parts are not as fun to do as others, but they do make a really fine looking finished garment. Need finger protection. Yeah, that's why there exists this tool called an iron finger. I've definitely burned myself doing these things before. Especially like right here, because I want to hold in that little bit that we folded, the 1/4 inch. I don't want it to peek out. I should look into getting the iron fingers at the shop. Okay, so pressed the top of it to the stitch line, and now we're folding it again. So the idea is that your understitch will be at the top. I should have used a contrasting thread. Who cares if it didn't match completely? But your understitch is basically at this top right here. And then press again. I really, really like the construction of how this collar finishes up. Oh, okay, it's quite bulky there. At your shoulder seams, you might find it has quite a bit of bulk. So when you're hemming that part of it, you might need to just go a little bit. Give it a little bit of a tug. Just snipping off a little bit of that shoulder seam bulk. Almost done. So if you're doing a label, I would definitely make sure you have it at this stage handy, because that's what we're going to do next. And then we're going to call it an evening after we're done hemming the collar. I'm just giving it a good press down because this area seems to have come undone actually. So this is my little buttonhole. Remember, this is supposed to have a 1/4 inch inwards in order to encase, not have any loose threads. It came undone, so I'm going to fix it. So I'm giving the 1/4 inch a repress. And then I'm going to press it again, folding down so that it holds itself. And because it's lots of layers, you can just hold it for a little longer at these parts. Depending on your fabric, just be mine. This is a 100% cotton, so no need to worry. But if it was a more delicate fabric like a silk, just keep that in mind. Okay. So now clip it again, or pin it, whichever you prefer. Oh. I'm just noticing I didn't quite lay as flat as I would like it to be. I'm flipping it right side out again. Okay. I'm gonna give it another press and clip. Catherine, one of the co-owners of Fabrications, always says that pressing is what elevates a garment from looking handmade. Not that there's any problem with that, but it elevates a garment from looking handmade to looking slightly more professional. So don't be worried if you have to press quite a few times. It'll make sure that your garment looks good at the end. Ooh, that's hot to the touch. Okay, I'm gonna do some quick. So depending on your label, if you're putting one on, so this label will slip underneath, whoops, right side. It's just gonna slip like that because of the style of label it is. And for this type of garment, if you have it, I would just recommend using it because it's such an easy way to do it. Otherwise, if you have one that is long and has the little edges there, then you would just put it on and sew it at the little edges. Or if you don't like labels, then no need to put a label on. So I've just clipped it all around, not as many as I did the first time around since it already is quite secure. And just put in your label where you want it to go. So roughly I put it in the middle, roughly halfway, and ensure that it is straight because it is not right now. I can tell by looking. That looks better. Oh, this baby is getting a label. Yay, I'm so glad. Which one are you gonna, I've seen ripped the hell out of this when I couldn't wrap my brain around the French seams on fabric that is identical right sides and wrong side. So I put in my label that says shit with a steam ripper. So that's why I did it. Okay, so now in terms of hemming it, it says 3/8 of an inch away from the finished neck edge. So just try and do that if you're making sure that you catch this edge. If 3/8 of an inch doesn't work to catch this because that's the whole reason we're hemming right now, because we want to ensure that that stays down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my understitch foot again, just to make sure that everything is the way I want it to. You're using perfectly imperfect. That is also a good one. Whoops, ow. Have some water. So this time I'm stitching it wrong side up so that I can ensure that I'm catching the seam. Where I'm using my hand wheel right now because it's quite bulky where the buttonhole is, in addition to all the layers. So just to give myself more maneuverability, I'm using that, and then I'm going to backstitch it. Put down. Okay, and now I'm just going to go as normal and take out the clips as needed. Closer. Again, you're doing a curve, so just take your time. And some of my thread came up at a weird angle. So I'm just getting to the shoulder seam. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of encouragement on the other side. My machine is making some noises. Oh no. Something's wrong with my threads. Well, I'm gonna have to unpick that, but let's just pretend that this all went so smoothly. My threads were acting up, but you would get a finished line right there. Again, you can use matching thread. You can, if you like a little bit of a contrast, you can use contrast, but I did use matching thread. And it would all be finished, and this would all be gone because it all went so smoothly on your end. And then you would have a finished collar. I'm going to end it there because I'm going to redo this off camera, since you guys already basically saw the steps I have to do, since I have to unpick it and redo it again. Perfectly imperfect would work right now for right here too. If anyone has any questions, just let us know. And I hope your collar and neck facing goes smoothly, a little better than mine. And yes, so next week we're going to do regular hemming. Ooh, sorry, I did forget to mention one thing. If you didn't do this in the earlier step in between the French seams and putting on the collar, the pattern advises you to, on your shoulder, I'm doing a short sleeve, that's why it's so short. You're going to fold it in and fold it in again, because doing this here before you put your side seam will make it easier to do the hemming at that stage on your shoulders. So definitely don't forget to do that step. Give it a nice press in case it does get loose, to give it a press again, because that's going to make life significantly easier when it comes to the hemming stages. And that's what we're going to be doing next week. Simple hems and just some tips and tricks with that. But more importantly, we're going to be doing the Remy Raglan expansion sleeve. Julie at the shop, she did hers with the expansion sleeve and it looks fantastic. But she ended up using bias tape instead of the cuffs that is recommended in the pattern. So just keep that in mind if you're also going to do it. I'm going to try with the cuffs in the pattern ahead of time on one of the sleeves and see how that goes. And if it doesn't go well, then I'm going to come up with some sort of hack like Julie did. So that's everything for this evening. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.